and welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast special. Why is it special, I hear you ask? Well, it's special because we have just come out of the latest boring international break, but we couldn't leave you good listeners without audio. So we've recorded a couple of interviews, and we're recording this special, which is based around the EFL and predominantly the Championship, because we all know that that's Ross's favourite subject, and I couldn't do this without Ross. So here he is. Good evening, Ross.
Good evening to you, sir.
It's been a while, mate. We've been suffering through these internationals and boring stuff, and everybody telling us how good or bad Southgate is and all this. So I guess it's quite good to know that recording this, we're only 3 days away from having our football back.
Yes, it is. We've also had quite a lot of managerial changes in the lower leagues to keep me entertained, so it's not all bad.
Oh, and we will come to them. Don't you worry about that. Right, for a change, we have some guests with us, Ross. We've got some fine people. Ladies first, we have Miss Natalie Dean coming back to us. Natalie, good evening to you again.
Good evening.
It's been a while, hasn't it? We haven't spoken since all the way back when we first did that interview. Was it last summer, wasn't it, I think?
Too long.
And it has been too long. Well, welcome back. You are very welcome. We'll give our listeners a chance to get to know you again in a second. But we've also got a new face and a new voice. It is Mr. Josh Dawe. Good evening, Josh.
Evening, Kris.
Now, I, of course, know you from other pastures, other podcasts, if you will, but you are coming on to represent Brighton this evening. So we will have a good chinwag about Brighton and all things Championship. How long have you been following Brighton for, anyway?
I've been following Brighton since I moved to the city, which has been about 2003. Wow. So coming up 13 years.
And do you get down there very often?
Well, I get to about 3 or 4 games every season. The next one is due to be on Friday when I go and see them play Villa. I'm sure we can talk more about that one.
Yes, we can. And given the fact this podcast is likely to be released on or around that same day, it will be the day of the game. So be safe. Be safe. Nat, why don't you tell us a bit about, obviously we've done an interview with yourself before, but you are a long-suffering or long-enjoying Sheffield Wednesday fan, are you not? So do you want to remind our listeners how you came about following Wednesday?
Yeah, I've supported them most of my life, really. I mean, but when my parents were younger, they actually supported Leeds, but by the time I was born, they'd somehow come around to supporting Sheffield Wednesday and were season ticket holders. So I ended up being taken along as a season ticket holder from about the age of maybe 7 or 8, and ended up being a mascot twice as a kid as well. So I've been stuck with them ever since, really.
And I'll ask you both this question individually before we get into the meat of the podcast itself. With you, Nat, how are you feeling about Wednesday this season? Quite a lot of changes, quite a lot of different players, ins and outs, but managers performing again. Are you kind of loosely confident about how things are going?
I think we'll be fine overall, and I think we'll make the playoffs again. But I think some of our fans are overreacting slightly because we've just lost 2 games. And actually, to be fair, in the last game against Ipswich, we played pretty terribly, I would say, which I think is causing us a bit of an issue. And people are overreacting to it and thinking it's the end of the world, we're going to get relegated, blah, 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 sack the manager. I think they just need to calm down. But we have got some difficult games coming up, but I'm confident we can get some points out of it, and then we'll get back on track, hopefully.
Yeah, football fans overreacting. It's not like me and Ross deal with that every week. What about yourself, Josh? Are you quietly confident on Brighton's performances this season? I mean, started the season like a house on fire, currently sitting second in the Championship. Doesn't get much better, does it?
Well, we heard this all before last season where we went unbeaten for, about 13 games without losing. The longest run, I believe it was in the Football League, unbeaten. Then we got to the playoffs and it kind of dragged off a bit. So it seems a little bit deja vu-y this time around, but I would have taken top 6 at the beginning of the season. Now I think we should be pushing for top 3, hopefully automatic, but it's the Championship. Anything can happen.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Ross and I have discussed that at length, and you need to, you definitely need to copyright that saying. What was it? What did you use it? Sorry.
Deja vu-y?
Deja vu-y, that's it, yes. Yeah, you need to copyright that. That's some serious, it's a serious hipster word if ever I heard one. Right. Okay. So this is how we're gonna kind of go through this podcast, and I just want to keep it kind of informal and a little bit round tabley, and let's just have a little natter between us. Pardon the pun. So Ross, what? How are you sort of feeling about things championship wise? We're at that final international break before the turn of the year. We look at the table as we speak. It's not really a big surprise to see Newcastle up the summit. So shall we start there and get a couple of views? I'm assuming that all of you think that they're probably going to go up. So Ross, where do you sit on Newcastle? And obviously feel free to ask our guests anything you want on their opinions on them as well.
Well, I think Newcastle are going by the form book, really, aren't they? We all thought they'd absolutely sweep it and they'd be done by March. Obviously, the Championship is a division where it's very rare to see a club dominate, and one of the reasons I like it is if a club does dominate the league, they're gone the next year. You know, they get promoted, or if there's a team that's particularly bad, they're gone the next year as well because they get relegated. So it's nice to see the Championship shake up a little bit and to see a big powerhouse in it, I suppose. If you're a fan of a team in the division, I'm not sure you'll share my opinion on that. But as an outsider, it's great fun to see Newcastle in the Championship. It's a great opportunity for them to rebuild. I think already you can see from the starting 11 compared to last year, it's much more compact. It's much nicer to watch play. So yeah, I'm a big fan of what Newcastle are doing in the Championship. All I would really ask of both of our guests is that there's a stigma about big clubs coming down and other teams raising their game for them. Do you see Newcastle as a big scalp because they are Newcastle, or do you see them as a big scalp just because they're in the position you want to be in?
Let's start with Nat. How do you see Newcastle as a Wednesday fan? I don't think they've come down to you guys yet, have they? So how do you sort of look at them in this division?
To me, it's just boring because they're going to easily win the league. And I know they haven't actually made a loss with all the players they've sold, but they've basically got a Premiership team effectively in the Championship. And it's kind of boring because it's difficult. Nobody can really compete with them unless they spend a load of money. So really, to me, it's kind of boring because it's kind of written off first place pretty much before the season even starts. And to me, I don't really like that. But, good for them. They're going to go straight back up. But as a fan of another team, it's quite boring, really.
Are your fans quite excited by the thought of a club like them or Villa, for example, coming to Hillsborough? But you had Villa recently, didn't you?
We had Villa first game of the season. I think potentially previously we would have been, but I think after how last season went and getting to Wembley, we had Arsenal at home, and before that we had Man City away a couple of times in the Cup. I don't think we kind of have that excitement anymore of having a club like Villa or Newcastle come. It would have to be sort of your likes of Man U, Liverpool to get the fans excited now, really.
Yeah, interesting viewpoints. And what about yourself, Josh? Is it a big game if you look at the Amex Stadium, full house? Is it a big scalp for a Brighton to take on a Newcastle, particularly where you are on the table?
I would say where we are, we're probably the team that is competing with them at the moment for that top spot. Some would have said before the season has started that Aston Villa should have been up there and challenging, especially with their squad. But yeah, you had two teams that were Premier League squads with Champions League winning managers, and one of them falling by the wayside, and Rafa still continuing with his pragmatic football. But I think we've had a lot of big teams come down to the Amex before. It's a modern stadium; it has less of that to it. Whereas when the teams came to the Withdean, that was a lot bigger occasion because it was 8,000 of us as opposed to the 25 or so that fit into the Amex. It's just a different mentality around the club now, I think, where we believe we're just that step away from it being a regular occurrence. The likes of Newcastle, Man U, Arsenal, Man City are coming and turning out at the Amex at a regular occasion.
Yeah, so it is like you say, it's a Premiership or Premier League stadium from the outside,
Yeah.
and from what you can see internally as well. And as Ross, coming back to you, we're all kind of in agreement then, pretty much, that the Newcastle are likely to be, certainly should be the favourites to go up as title winners. So let's kind of cluster a few teams together and look at the challenges. Obviously, we've got Brighton, we've touched on already. Let's group together, say Huddersfield, Norwich, and I'll leave Birmingham aside. I'll leave Leeds aside. Let's take the three below them. Let's throw Reading in as well. Ross, we said pre-season that I don't think any of us saw Huddersfield doing what they're doing at the moment. Reading under Yapstam, I don't think either of us were convinced. I think that's probably fair. Norwich, however, we thought would be up there. So how do you sort of see those three right as we speak? Because there's mixed form between the three at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think the position they're in at the moment is going to be the position that any of them actually finish in. I still think Norwich are probably going to be good enough for the top two, but certainly it's going to be a long foot race with Brighton now, because they've obviously had the experience of doing it last year. And you look at the defence at Brighton, 9 goals conceded in 16 games in the Championship. That's a very good record. But, no team in this division can compare with that at the moment. So they're going to have a long road to hoe if they want to get into second. But I still fancy Norwich for that, because they know the division so well. But you look at their stats, 28 goals scored, 27 conceded. It's looking a bit wobbly at the moment, so they need to obviously get themselves back on track. I know there's a little bit of pressure on Alex Neil at the moment, but I don't think that's going to be any more than temporary. I think he's too good a manager, and I think Norwich need him at the moment. Reading, you kind of get the feeling they're overachieving a little bit at the moment with Jaap Stam. I know a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the fan base being a bit off-put by style of football, but they've done it very, very quietly up in fourth, so if they can carry that on, then fantastic. But there's something about Reading at the moment that still says to me there's other teams that you would expect to be in and around there, like Sheffield Wednesday. I know they're quite, not low on the table. Where are they now? 10th in the table. You'd expect them to be higher. Villa will probably be higher. Derby are on their way back up now. It's a team like Reading that you think will get pulled out. And then Huddersfield, bets are off with Huddersfield. The start they've had was absolutely fantastic. They seem to be settling into a bit more of a simpler rhythm now, where it's scattered draws, losses and wins. But yeah, you look at their stats, 17 scored, 18 conceded. They just don't have enough at the moment to maintain this across a season from what we've seen so far. They strike me as a team that, much like Fulham, would really have benefited from the loan window if it was still going. Just to add a little bit of new blood in, just to kind of stem the tide of some of these defeats and draws. But no, I think they're all they're all good shouts for the playoff positions. But I'd certainly expect Norwich to finish higher of the three.
Yeah, it is definitely seems to be the logical ones. Nat, you've played Sheffield Wednesday, played Norwich away, got a 0-0 draw back in August, sort of the early stage of the season, and more recently went to Huddersfield and won Forestieri with a penalty there. Did you go to either of those games? And if so, or even if you didn't, which sides which of the two sides were the more impressive of the two?
So I watched the Norwich game on TV and I went to the Huddersfield game. So I think Norwich was a very difficult game for us, and we did really well to get a draw out of it. And it was the whole thing where Forestieri refused to go to the game, etc. And I think with that, I think there was some real team spirit shown there. And I think that got us a draw in that game. Now, when we played Huddersfield, I feel as though they played quite a similar style of football to us, but we had the better quality of players. So, and they didn't really threaten us. Like, they passed the ball around a lot. Like, they had a lot of possession, but it was all just passing it around the back and not really threatening us. So that game, I thought we easily deserved to win it. We could have won more than 1-0, really, in that game. It was an interesting one. But one thing that I think with Wednesday will benefit us, as opposed to some of the teams around us, we've got quite a big squad, and a lot of players we've got can easily fill in for someone who's been in the starting 11, and it's not necessarily like a downgrade on the person who's been starting. And in a way, that's been a bit of a problem with Carlos not knowing who the best 11 are. But I think over Christmas, when we've got loads of games, that might really help us in terms of teams who are going to have to replace players with the ones who are potentially not as good. Interesting.
And we'll come to you, Josh, as well on a similar vein. With the teams that are sort of in and around Brighton at the moment, we group together Huddersfield, Reading, and Norwich. Is there one of those three that you look at as the big rivals for your second place, if you will, if we're going to assume Newcastle win it?
Going with the way that they're playing at the moment, I would say Reading are almost a dark horse to come through and challenge us. Huddersfield obviously had that amazing start to the season, which came out of nowhere. Looks like they're trailing off a little bit at the moment. And Norwich, in their current form, is Alex Neil still going to be there? Are they performing to the standard they should be? Probably not, especially as we put 5 past them just a couple of weeks ago. It does look like Reading, that we've had problems with before, could be the best and nearest rivals to us for that automatic place.
It's going to be an interesting race. And before we look at the rest of the league, I want to I could wait no more. I want to get an argument going. So let's cast our minds back, I should say, to the playoff game last season between Wednesday and Brighton, and of course, I'd be remiss to mention you played each other recently as well. So it's all in recent memory. Nat, first, how did you? I remember speaking to you at the time. You went to both semi-finals, didn't you, last season, from memory? You were, I think it's fair to say, gutted, weren't you? Do you still look back now and think, what could have, or are you now looking at what we can put right this season?
Yeah, I think it was a difficult one because I think it was. I never believed it would actually happen. Then when we actually got to the final, it was like we can do this. We can potentially do this now. Then the actual day was amazing. We got on the pitch and we just didn't play. And it was really disappointing because I think if we'd have actually played like we can play, we could have potentially got promoted. And it's even more annoying watching Hull. They're just a waste of a Premier League space, and that makes it really frustrating. But it was. I mean, the semi-final was such a good experience. It was like, especially in recent times, one of the best atmosphere I can ever remember at Hillsborough. And so, it is. I have good memories of it, but then it's kind of tainted by the fact that we lost at Wembley, if that makes sense, the whole thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You got a day trip to Brighton out of it, so I mean that's got to be a highlight, I would imagine. But the away days are always fun.
No, the away game was horrendous. Like I didn't enjoy any of the game whatsoever until near the end. I mean, because they came out and it was just literally they just pummeled our goal and it was horrendous. I felt a bit sick actually. I kept turning round, like everyone around me was feeling the same. And then the goal Lewis Dunk scored, and we were all like, "Oh God, we're going to lose like 4-0 here." It was horrendous. And then we got that ridiculously fluky goal. And it was like celebrating the goal literally out of relief. It was like, oh my God, I don't know how that's happened. But it was like almost a relief. And then the second half, really, I think Brighton kind of burnt out in the first half because they'd just gone for it. And then it was a bit better. But the end of the game was nice. But the actual game now, not so enjoyable.
Not enjoyable. And what about the league game this season? It was a 2-1 home defeat back in early October. Again, was it a little bit of kind of memories conjuring back from last season, or was it a completely different game?
Yeah, it was completely different, but in the way that I think, potentially because of what happened last season in the playoffs, I think Brighton, they wanted it a bit more than us. This time, I think it was always going to happen. They were always going to come get revenge on us. And I think if it had been the other way around, and we'd lost to them in the playoffs, I think every chance we'd have gone there and won. I think it was even-ish game, but they were a bit better than us, and they definitely wanted it more.
Yeah, and flipping it on its head there, Josh, obviously from the disappointments the disappointment of losing over the two legs last season, how did you expect Brighton to bounce back as they have done this season, and have you still got memories of how close they got last season, or has that all been wiped away?
Well, I was at one of the games in the playoffs. I was at the home tie. Yeah, it was the first leg was absolutely awful from our point of view, and as Nat has said, Sheffield just wanted it more. We should have beaten them. Going into it on paper, I thought last season we should have got promoted because I think we would have done Hull at Wembley Stadium. It was just I was so gutted for it, and led to me disliking Forestieri forever as a player.
About knockout, so it's all right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only one thing I don't like about Knockout, and that's his song, because they claim that he's better than Ozil, and that's just wrong. That's just ridiculous. I can barely sing it, let's put it that way.
He did at Hillsborough a couple of weeks ago. A bit longer. He did his celebration annoyed quite a lot of Wednesday fans, because I think it was because he got injured in the first leg of the playoffs. He scored and made quite an excessive celebration in front of the Wednesday fans to start with, and then ran across the whole of one of our stands doing a seagull shape and ran into our stand. So it was quite irritating for Sheffield Wednesday fans to see that.
Yeah, that's what did us for
very polite.
The rest of the home leg. As you said, that we ran out of ideas after the Lewis Dunk goal went in. The crowd, we tried to push them over the line, but without Knockout on the wing, we were just completely lost and devoid of ideas. So it was good to see this season, when he's been out, that we can actually cope without him.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of the reason you struggled in the playoffs last year, though, I think it would have been a different story if you hadn't have had to play to your maximum until the last game of the season. Because like with us, we didn't. And I think because you had to do that, you'd almost had a playoff final before with Middlesbrough. I think that made a big difference too. And you end up getting loads of injuries at Hillsborough, which obviously will have been a result of that, I would imagine. I think if you'd have been at full strength and if you'd have kind of, not had to play to your maximum till the last game of the season like we didn't, I think it could have been a different story too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sure, there's something about that Hillsborough pitch because there was a couple of away teams that I support that had injury issues there.
Really?
Last season.
Actually, the Arsenal game, I remember. Yeah, it's Oxlade-Chamberlain, Walcott both forced off. Although I'm convinced to this day that was lack of warming up and preparation. I'm convinced to this day that's what it was. But
generally have injury problems though, is it at other grounds? Let's be honest. So.
Yeah, true. There's worse pitches out there for sure. Ross, I have to just ask you, just for your thoughts on what Josh and Nat were saying there about that sort of back end of last season. I vividly recall actually watching that Middlesbrough game when I think they had to draw, didn't they, to go up? I remember it was very tense, and didn't Brighton get a last minute goal in that game?
Yeah, let's put it this way: we were sorted out by Mourinho's prodigy.
Yes. Karanka, yes, of course, yeah. I remember seeing that game. Ross, do you feel that there's a point in that with regards to the tiredness of the team, particularly from Brighton's standpoint going into the playoffs last season?
Yeah, I think we discussed it at the time, didn't we? We were picking who we thought was going to go up, and I said Hull, because they knew they were going to be in the playoffs. They had time to prepare for it. They said, right, well, we can't leave the playoff positions now. We can't get into the promotion places, so let's just get ready for the playoffs. The issue with Brighton was that they were right in it until the very last day, and then obviously you got the heartbreak of missing out on the last kick of the game. It cast my mind back to Watford. Watford. Mix up
the Troy Deeney goal, yes.
With Troy Deeney. They did it all the time. And you go back through the list of championship teams that have just missed out on second place. They fall into third, and generally speaking, they are the weakest ones in the playoff positions because they have the heartbreak of just missing out on the final day. And then your heads drop, and then you realise, right, we've got to pick ourselves back up again because next week we've got to go and play so and so. So yeah, it didn't overly shock me to see Brighton lose the game. It didn't overly shock me to see Sheffield Wednesday get to the final either, because I thought they were one of the better teams in the Championship, especially in the latter end of the season. But yeah, I thought it was Hulls all day. I thought they just had the time to prepare for it. And if you finish fifth and you know you're going to finish fifth or fourth, I think you're in the best position when it comes to the playoffs myself.
Yeah, agreed. And I'll never forget Nat speaking to you after that defeat at Wembley. And you were not a happy bunny. I think it's fair to say.
It was just rubbish. I mean, it's the game. It was just a terrible game, and it was a really good goal that won it. But we just didn't do anything. It was just really disappointing. No one turned up. It was just disappointing.
Yeah. We won't drag it up again. We'll let it lie.
One other thing as well is that I think really didn't help Brighton is Dale Stevens got sent off against Middlesbrough, and then he was suspended from the semi-finals. And I think just having him in the midfield would have made a big difference as well.
Yeah, he was crucial, wasn't he, at that stage of the season? And I remember that sending off as well. Yes, well, hopefully better things ahead for both sides this season. Let's move back into the Championship and have a look at some more teams. I want to get a kind of a bit of a feel from all of you about Leeds, because things are seemingly changing there. Ross, let's start with you, because obviously you've watched them at close quarters as well as all the other teams obviously in the Championship, but Leeds have been quietly creeping up the table. Ronaldo Vieira, seems to be making a name for himself. Gary Monk is getting things sorted, unbeaten in 4, 3 straight wins. They're up to 6. Are they potentially on the way back, or is that a bit too soon to say that?
There's always potential, but we all know with Massimo Cellino that it could change by Christmas, I was actually quite surprised he kept his job after the start they had. It's nice to see Gary Monk get a longer run, because normally managers don't even last half the time he went on without a win or with a couple of draws he had at the start of the season. So it was very nice to see him turn things around and get the opportunity, because I was worried that a managerial prodigy is the wrong word entirely, he's not that good. Hopeful, I suppose, is the correct word. A managerial hopeful like Gary Monk, I was always desperate for him to get a job that he could build with, and be there for a couple of years and really earn his stripes like he did with Swansea. So I'm hopeful that he can stay with Leeds for the foreseeable future and build them up. I think the issue he's going to have, though, is it's really kind of this year or never. I don't see him keeping his job if he doesn't get sixth at least, because they made that season ticket promise at the start of the season where they Chilio said he was going to refund half-price season tickets or something akin to that if they didn't make the playoffs. There's a lot of pressure on him to make sure he gets inside the top six. So he's got a very tough year ahead of him, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. But I worry if he misses out on the top six. It kind of feels like it's promotion places or nothing.
Yeah, win or bust. Josh has a man who has an affinity to Arsenal as well as Brighton, of course. Would you like to see Leeds back in the Premier League? I mean, are they a side you kind of miss the competition level with? Their fans divide opinions, but we've had some quite good games over the years with them.
Yeah, Leeds is one of those intriguing ones. We do always have a great game against them. They're almost one of those fallen giants that haven't really fallen properly, more kind of stumbled over compared to other big sides that have plummeted down the leagues. But yeah, I'm not really sure about what to think about Leeds now, especially with Chilino in charge. They're so sporadic. You don't know what could happen next week. He could fire the whole staff and I don't know, he could sell.
Start again.
It's just, yeah. It's one of those strange ones that I don't know how to call Leeds seasons, and I don't think their fans can either. So it's just quite apprehensive for everyone involved, and almost stepping on eggshells. I can't imagine what it's like to work for them.
No, I don't think I'd fancy it, to be honest.
No.
Although the money might be quite nice, to be fair. So Leeds are enigma. Nat, I'm going to give you another enigma because working our way down the table a little bit further, we come to Fulham. I believe who you might be seeing. You saying you were thinking about going to the Fulham game? Is it this weekend?
I'm going on Saturday. I'm a bit nervous about this game actually because we beat Fulham 3 times last season actually, but they're playing quite well at the moment. They're very compact as a team, but then they won 5-0, didn't they? In I think it was the last game or the one before. I'm quite apprehensive. I think it's going to be a really difficult game for us because I think they're pushing. I think they'll have expectations to be around the playoffs this year too, and they're really difficult to beat, especially at Craven Cottage. And no, I think they could be one to watch potentially for making their way up the table this year. And I'm pretty nervous about this game actually.
Yeah, I made a very bold call, Ross will tell you, pre-season, that I thought they'd be one of the teams competing for the top, and
Really?
I may be completely wrong, but there's still hope. I'm still backing my Cottagers. There's hope for them.
I think it's possible.
Yeah, they've got some players down there. It's just whether it all gels at the right time.
Sonia Luco just won Player of the Month as well. Kind of
Did he really?
signifies why they're now up in 8th. They've had a really, really good run lately. I know they've had a couple of bad results in it as well, but considering where they were start of the season, and Jokanovic at the start of the season said they weren't ready for this year.
Yeah, he did.
Again, like I was saying earlier, I think they would have benefited hugely if the loan window is still open. They scrapped that this year. If they could have brought someone else in, I think they could have been a real danger. But I think for them, the key is going to be January, making a couple of really clever signings. Maybe they can find their way in.
If they can Chris Martin scoring as well, because that's possible. He can potentially be prolific. Like he's been for Derby in the past. I think if they can get him scoring, that'll be really good for them.
It's weird. Dropped off the face of the earth, didn't he, after that success at Derby, and then seemed to just go quiet. And I think he scored. Didn't he score for Scotland in Malta? Was it? I think he got a go out there, and sort of seemed to reignite him slightly. That's what they're now calling the Vardy effect, but we'll see on that one.
Do you think Fulham could have come straight back up if they'd gone the right way around it and looked at their amazing youth academy and youth products they had at the time? And perhaps this is them coming back and eventually sorting themselves out, because they did have a great number of youth prospects in their ranks. That Corley Woodrow is one that comes to mind.
Yeah,
Roberts has gone to Man City.
Patrick Roberts, yeah. What do you think of that, Ross? What do you think of do you think they did it the wrong way, maybe?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They tried to strike a balance between using the youth talent and then spending the parachute payments. They spent 11 million on Ross McCormack and it just didn't pay off. They threw it all up front and then forgot there was a backline to deal with because they've been selling off players that A, weren't good enough, and B, didn't want to be there because they were on high wages and wanted to go somewhere else and play Premier League football, etc. You had a new chairman in as well. I think that was his first full season in charge when they first came down. There was a lot changing at Fulham, so I'm not overly surprised that it went the way it did. I actually tipped them for relegation at one point last year, didn't I? Because they were on such a wretched run near the end of the year. And Jokanovic had just gone in and he was trying to play it along the ground. And it's like, you're in a relegation battle, mate. Just dig in, make sure you get the points. But thankfully they did. I think this year they've got a really good platform to build on. And I think if Jokanovic had been there when they first came down, they would have been a bit better. But they tried to do too much too soon, I think, when they first came down. It was try and bring some of the kids through and try and spend your way out, and they just didn't get the balance right. So it doesn't overly surprise me they're still down there, but I am hopeful that they're on their way back.
Yeah, it's another big name, and I want to stick with you for a minute, Ross, because I also want to get your thoughts on Birmingham, who, again, similar to Fulham, I guess, in stature, and obviously the size of the club is massive. Two questions. Have they finally sorted out their pitch? Because it's always been terrible. And do you think, again, they're a bit of a sleeping giant, or maybe a dark horse, because they're in 7th at the moment, just creeping slowly up the table?
If they weren't before, they definitely are now, because they just had their $1 million takeover, haven't they? The Chinese investment has now been sorted, so their January is going to be huge, and I think they are one that could storm it. I know we're waiting for clubs like Aston Villa and Derby and maybe even Wolves, if they can sort their house out quickly enough, to maybe start creeping up for that 6th spot, but I certainly think Birmingham will be in it. I think Gary Rowett is a very clever manager. I think he's very astute. I think he won't be overawed by the millions he'll have to work with. I think he'll still go about it very calmly and very quietly, and he'll bring in some decent players if he can get them. So I'm very hopeful for Birmingham. I think they can be in and around. I think a lot of us have a soft spot for them after. I know you probably won't, Kris, but after the League Cup win a couple of years ago and then the relegation, I think a lot of people have a bit of a soft spot for them, and they always seem to me to be the neutrals' favourites in the Championship, especially now with Gary Rowett in there. They've obviously had a bit of a bad run the past couple of seasons with Lee Clark and some of the financial issues, etc. But I'm confident on them now. I think they play some good stuff. I think they're just lacking a consistent striker, but I don't think they're too far off.
Yeah, just thinking about the name Obafemi Martins just drives horrible things through. Or that the ruffling of the hair from, was it James McFadden on Lauren Koscielny, I seem to remember. Oh, God. Yeah, let's move on. Just Birmingham. Yeah, they can stay in the Championship. Sorry, Brum fans. Ross, I want you to also just have a quick word. Anything, feel free to ask Nat anything you want about Sheffield Wednesday, because they are next on my list, and obviously we'll come to Nat in a second to get her views. But anything you wanna sort of check in about them, Ross, because obviously we followed them quite closely last season after me speaking to Nat previously, and we were impressed, weren't we, over the course of the season, and we have been again this year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sheffield Wednesday and the way they're playing football these days. Simple question. I say simple. If it was that simple, it would have been fixed by now. But what's your best front line? Because it seems to me you've got some very good strikers there, but no one is at the moment seemingly consistent enough for you.
No, so I think the problem this season is Forestieri is not turning up. And he, on paper, and last season, is part of our best front two. So right now, I'd say it's probably Hooper and Fletcher, because Forestieri is not playing, but it should be really Fletcher and Forestieri. But Forestieri's forgotten how to play football, so yeah, not at the moment.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Lucas João. I think Lucas João is a very underrated player for Championship level, and
he started off really promising. Seemed really good, but then he's had injury problems, and I think he had a few personal problems, and he's kind of doesn't seem to really be progressing. And at his age, he should be. And I think it's a shame, because I hope he does, because otherwise I think he'll end up going out on loan, and who knows what'll happen then.
So it's a tough one to judge, isn't it? What is the latest on Forestieri? I mean, there was all this talk about him, as you said earlier, refusing to play a game, and he wanted out. Has he committed? Is it just a question of get to January and sell him? What's the latest on him at the moment?
So I think my take on it is him and his agent probably asked for a wage increase. Now, when he's got 3 years left on his contract, and I think what's probably happened is the chairman decided not to give him it. He's then got in a mood, decided, oh, well, I won't play then if you won't give me a wage increase. The chairman's been like, well, I'm still not going to give you a wage increase. So he's decided to play. But I think it's almost like his head's not in it anymore. And I think we did have bids from Derby and a couple of other clubs. And with hindsight, really, if it was enough money, we should have sold him, because he's just not the player he was last season. And it's come to the stage where in January, you've got 2 options, really, haven't you? You either, I suppose 3. You either sell him, and we're not going to make as much money as we would have before for him. We keep him, don't increase his wages, and risk the fact that he might just carry on being useless effectively. Or you give him his wage increase. But is that really the right way to go about it? Probably not, no. So it's difficult because he's played well, I'd say, in one game this season against Huddersfield away, and I think that might be because he had some extra motivation because their fans really don't like him, and that's really the only game he's been anything like he was last season for us in.
Wouldn't be surprised if it has been turned by Newcastle, because I know they were rumoured with a bid, weren't they? And Rolando Aaron's just gone down with an ACL injury, I think it was. He's out for the rest of the season, so they may be back in January. I don't know.
If he signed for Newcastle, he wouldn't be on the start. He wouldn't be in the starting 11 every week, unlikely.
No, absolutely not. No.
And if they got promoted, he would be like for Watford. They weren't interested in him in the Premier League. They weren't even interested in the second season of the Championship. So if he wants to play football, going to Newcastle wouldn't be really a solution for him.
No, I can give him a game Sunday morning. It's not a problem. But
after being at Watford for so long, you would have thought he would have jumped at the chance to play consistently for Sheffield Wednesday, wouldn't you? I know he had a good year last year, but you still would have thought he would have enjoyed it and would have, been wanting to stay and play his games. But there you go.
Well, he wants to retire at the club. He loves the club, wearing T-shirts saying "Wednesday till I die," all this type of stuff. And then as soon as he doesn't get his kind of big wage increase, it just shows you, doesn't it, what it's all about.
Fickle footballers.
Fans absolutely adored him last year, and it's just left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth. And I think it's kind of has had an impact on the team morale, and might have been a bit of the issue we've had this season is potentially linked to him.
Yeah, when you're so reliant on one player and then they don't perform, and you're right, it does have an effect. I must admit, I had no idea that you had Irby Emanuelson at Sheffield Wednesday.
I think he's been on the bench once so far.
Wow.
But he told the local press how he's been paid loads of money. Our left back's all right, but we only have one left back really. We've been playing Adam Reach, who we signed from Middlesbrough left back a bit, so we don't really have a backup left back. So it'll be interesting to see what happens because I've watched him a bit to try and find out a bit about him. Because obviously I haven't seen him play for us, and it looks like he's really good at attacking but can't really defend. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I can confirm. Having watched him at AC Milan and Ajax, I can 100% confirm that that's exactly it. He is the modern day fullback, likes to attack, doesn't like to defend. So, yeah.
Play holding midfield for.
He did, yes. Yeah, he did. They tried to convert him when Nigel de Jong was injured, and it didn't work very well at all. So, yeah, I think he's in the twilight. He's only 30, believe it or not. But I tell you, one other question I had for you before we move on from Wednesday for a minute. As a young lad in the academy by the name of George Hurst, any relation?
Yeah, funnily enough, yes. His dad was quite prolific for Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, so is that David Hurst's son, is it?
It is David Hurst's son, yeah. It's an interesting one because he's been scoring quite a lot of goals in the academy and also for England I think he's probably the under-19s he's been playing in. And everyone's like, play him, you've got to play him. But the thing is, though, I find that a bit naive, really. He's very young. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of expectation with him being David Hurst's son, and I think he's obviously going to be probably not strong enough, even just physically, to play in the Championship yet. And I just worry that if he was rushed into the team, which is what everyone wants to happen, and then it didn't work for him, and it would knock his confidence because people would expect things from him. And I think with him, you really need to be careful because he's had interest from other clubs, the Premiership clubs as well, but decided to sign with Wednesday. So I just hope that he doesn't get rubbed and we don't try and play him too early in the first team.
Yeah, overplaying a player with potential. It's always the worry, isn't it? But it's good to see players like that younger versions of their dads. It's quite cool. Yeah. So had to check. Right, let's move on then. So we'll skate over a couple of sides just in the interest of time. We can't cover everyone, but Bristol City and Preston are both having sort of fairly decent seasons, 9th and 11th respectively. Preston currently on a good run, actually 3 wins from the last 5 and a draw as well, so they're doing all right for themselves. Brentford, a bit of a sticky patch, but 12th you'd probably say right now that's probably where they should be, dare I say. Released a new crest this week. I don't know if you saw that, Ross. Did you see that?
It's Man City rip-off with a B in it, isn't it?
It is not the best,
Very
is it?
strange.
Yeah, it is a little bit odd.
A wasp.
I think I
thought that was a contentious decision.
Oh yes,
the fans thought it looked more like a wasp.
Wasp, yeah, which of course you can't do when they are.
I have to admit, I have a phobia of wasps, but are they that different? Bees and wasps? Is it just size?
Bees are not.
Bees are fatter, aren't they, as well?
And bees die if they sting you, and because bees only sting you if you do something to them. Wasps are just evil and will just go around stinging people because they feel like it.
There you go. So, if any Brentford fans listening, maybe you should be the Wasps. Maybe that is the future, because then you can't get beaten.
Could always be the Red Bulls.
You could indeed.
Oh.
Yeah, more on that in a moment. Let's go down the table a bit more. Then obviously Barnsley are in 13th place again, probably where they would expect to be, I would guess, maybe a bit higher, in fact. But there's a couple of big clubs clustered in the mid-table. Josh, what's your thoughts on Aston Villa? Because obviously you say you're going to see them. Is it this weekend?
Yes, it's on Friday. So
it's
the Friday evening kickoff.
Good stuff. So at time of releasing this, probably could be the same day. So that's at the Amex, I'm assuming.
It is. I was incredibly annoyed that they've changed their manager, and now they're having a good run of form. So it's going to be an interesting one. They've I don't think anyone expected Aston Villa to drop off a cliff like they did when they got relegated. They were expected to stay a little bit consistent and stick around the top and challenge Newcastle.
They're such a weird. It's such a weird situation. But Steve Bruce, since he's come in, what is it? Five games unbeaten now, draw and 3 victories. Again, are they a team that you foresee kind of rocketing up the table? I mean, they already are, but do you think they'll continue this run?
Yeah, I'd expect them to be knocking on the door of 6th place come February, if they're not there already. They're only got to turn over 5 points. So it's not a hugely difficult task for them. I think Steve Bruce knows the league inside out, has played in it for many years. So I wouldn't see that as a problem at all for him.
Only 3 defeats.
It's interesting. Yeah.
3, was it 3? Say that again, Ross.
Only 3 defeats for them so far. Yeah, they haven't been great, but they've been tough to beat.
Yeah, which is, as you would know, half the battle of the Championship. Newcastle at top have lost 3. I think it's only actually Brighton that have lost less games, isn't it, than 3? They've only lost twice.
Yes.
So it's Villa. Where do you begin? And speaking of other big clubs in that position, we give Mick McCarthy and Ipswich a little mention because I would say they're underperforming in 15th, but nevertheless they're comfortable, shall we say? Ross, Derby, what's your kind of views on Derby at the moment? McLaren is back, bless him. Good win against Wolves, and that Darren Bent goal that we wax lyrical about. But are they, again, do you see enough in this Derby side to make a challenge in the second half of the season?
To make a challenge, yeah, but to actually go up, I don't think so. I remember saying at the end of last season that Derby County have never had the mentality for the playoffs. And I thought that Nigel Pearson was a fantastic appointment because he would give them that mentality. And then obviously he screwed it up by punching the chairman and everything else he did. So they seem to be back to where they were a couple of seasons ago, just with a couple more extra players. And they were a very good dynamic attacking team. And they did pick up some very good wins. They played some very nice stuff. And they were impressing people for a short spell before things started to turn for the manager. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them back up there. I think this is the beginning of a bit of a run for them. But at the same time, I don't think they're anywhere near good enough to go up this year. I certainly think there's a lot more teams that have taken their stead in the past season.
Yeah, based on what I've seen, I tend to agree with that. There's some good players there, but is there enough there? Not so sure.
There is the curious case of Will Hughes as well.
Yes, indeed.
He's still knocking around there, and I saw him play last season in his comeback game down at the Amex, and I'd never realised how small the guy was. He's barely got any meat on him.
He's so tiny, isn't he?
It's one of those where you want to see a player develop in the Championship. I think he needs to move to a bigger club that will bulk him up, and that will push him to the next level. And I think it could be something special, but it's finding that club for him.
I was going to say it's finding the right club to harness the talent, isn't it? Yeah. And, do you, Ross, just quickly, do you see parallels with James Ward-Prowse? Because he's always the player I think of when I see Will Hughes. I don't know why. It's just one of those things I think of.
I can see it, but I think there's a very good reason that no club's got in for him yet. You know, we've been talking about Will Hughes for a good few years now, and he's still at Derby. You know, through thick and thin, he's always been there. Whether they're in the top half or when they're struggling in the bottom half, he's still at Derby. I very rarely see rumours about him in the summer these days. So I think there's a reason that no one's picked him up, but that's not to say that he couldn't be a very good midfielder at some point. Like we were just saying there, he needs to develop. He just needs to kick on. He needs more game time. He needs to bulk up. And needs to kind of just get his head down and work harder, if you will. So yeah, I don't see any reason why he couldn't do it. But I just think at the moment there'll be plenty of people that would have gone to scout him, and there's obviously a good reason that no one's picked him up.
Yeah,
sure Newcastle were sniffing around while they were buying every man and his dog from everyone in the Championship to make sure that they're going up. But I think they went for Matt Ritchie in the end.
Doesn't surprise me.
I think he plays as a number 10, doesn't he? And he's just not... I think you can get cheaper on the continent, let's put it that way.
Well, Moussa Dembele went for, 9 million to Celtic? You'd probably be looking at that for Will Hughes. Because he's English, so
yeah.
I just think there's a reason that no one's moved for him. There's got to be something there that scouts have looked at and just said, yeah, he's not right for us.
Yeah, it's again, it's another one of those players that there is quite a long list, isn't there? When you look through the Championship players and you go, oh, what, are they still there? Oh, okay, just another one of those in the production line, if you will. Now, I want to ask you about Queen's Park Rangers because some of our listeners who may not be familiar with your good self won't know that you were one of the candidates in The Apprentice, not this season, but last season, or last year, I should say. So I would imagine that meant spending quite a lot of time in and around London, and probably in and around the sort of people that would have a big part in QPR or have that kind of background, shall we say, the business side of things. Yes. What do you, from a business standpoint, what do you make of what is going on at QPR? Because it just strikes me as a complete mess.
I don't really understand why they've sacked Hasselbank. I don't really get it. I don't understand why they've sacked him. They're not doing very bad. They're not doing that badly. I don't think they've got a squad that's really capable of reaching the playoffs. So I think they're doing like you can expect them to be doing, and I just don't understand it. I mean, they had the money before previously, but now it doesn't seem like he's really willing to spend that money. I think that Fernandes needs to decide what he wants, what he's doing with them. Really, does he want them to get back up? If so, he needs to invest properly in some players that will help him get out of the Championship. People who are familiar with the Championship can help him go up. So I don't think he really knows what he wants to do. He's kind of just confusing what he's doing because he's obviously he sacked Hasselbank, which suggests they're not doing well enough. So which would suggest he wants them to be higher up the table, so challenging for the playoffs. But he's not investing enough anymore in the club to match his ambitions. It would appear.
Very, very strange. Very strange case.
He's trying to sell.
Yeah,
I think that rings a bell. Yeah, he's trying to get rid of it. So maybe he's trying to protect an investment. But I think he's done relatively well getting in Holloway in. As much as I laughed when I first saw it, it's a very good appointment. So
we'll see.
You read my mind, Ross, because that was one of the stories I picked out, and I thought I must ask you your opinion on that because I like Ollie. I know a lot of Plymouth Argyle fans will not thank me for saying that. I say a lot of people kind of mock his accent and how he comes across and his sort of demeanour. They don't realise a lot of the things he has to sort of deal with. I believe he's got 2 autistic daughters from when he was down here at Plymouth Argyle. That was kind of was it out there, shall we say, in the press. And he does a lot of charity work. He's a very, very articulate guy off the pitch and generally conducts himself, I think, pretty well. He just injects a bit of humour, which kind of leads him to be shot at. So do you think it's a good potentially a good appointment for QPR in the fact that they are kind of going back to what worked before?
Yeah, like I say, I did laugh when I first saw it was announced. But at the same time, as soon as it was announced and I sat down and thought about it, I thought, that's actually a really, really good, safe appointment. When you're chopping and changing managers mid-season in the Football League in any division, you need to make sure you bring in someone that knows the division, that can set you up to be difficult to beat, that just grinds out the points. And you already see the Neil Warnock effect at Cardiff. I know they're still in and around the relegation zone, but they've picked up a lot more points than they did beforehand. Kenny Jackett is now in at Rotherham. I know they're not doing very well, but he will make them tougher to beat. He will stabilise them. So yeah, I think it's a good appointment. If you're asking me, do I like him on a personal level, he annoyed me a few seasons back because of some comments he made after Southampton knocked Blackpool out of the FA Cup. But aside from that, he's fun enough. He strikes me as a very ABC kind of manager. 4-4-2, stiff at the back, nice attackers up front. Let's just be difficult to beat. So I think it's a good appointment. I think it's a steady appointment, and if they do end up selling, I think he's the man that can spend a bit more wisely than they have been recently.
Yeah, we'll watch that one with a close eye on the English Breakfast in coming weeks. So do keep tuned for that one. Josh, I just want to get your thoughts on a couple of clubs together. Wolves and Nottingham Forest as a partnership of two clubs. 19th and 20th. Not good, I think it's fair to say. There's a little bit of talk about Nottingham Forest, which I want to ask Ross about in a second. But just those two clubs as a whole together, I mean, they're both massively underachieving, aren't they?
Yeah, I'd say if you were doing their half-term reports from school, you'd be saying that, yeah, must try harder. They've got all of the potential to be up in the higher echelons of the league. Nottingham Forest, only a couple of seasons ago, were knocking on the door of going up to the Premier League. It's amazing to see what can happen in 3 years or so, because, yeah, Wolves were flying high and then catastrophically fell to League One. Did they get sold in that time? I believe they had a change of ownership. Definitely many changes of manager in that time, and yeah, they've both got the potential in there. They just need the right men or women at the helm to sort them out, really. Because I would have expected Nottingham Forest to be definitely in the playoffs at this moment in time.
And look at them down in 20th on 16 points.
Still no clean sheet.
No, I was just gonna mention that, Ross, and I was gonna ask you about this whole Red Bull link, because it seems to be either Forest or Swindon seems to be the two clubs that they're potentially eyeing up. Do you think it would be a good thing?
That's the $50 million question that everyone's got an opinion on whether or not the Red Bull effect is positive or negative. Last time I heard, the sale was almost going through to a different company. I can't think of what nationality that company was now, but the last time I heard, the sale was going to a different company, and I didn't hear too much about Red Bull. I know there's been some talk recently. If Red Bull wanted to invest in the Championship, Nottingham Forest are a good enough bet. You know, they've still got a good youth academy. Obviously, we've just had Oliver Burke come through. You look at some of the players they brought in now. Hildeberto Pereira is a brilliant player. I know he's had his problems with disciplinary records. I think it's 3 red cards in 8 games now. He's still a very good young player. He's still a great asset to that squad. They're doing all right in terms of squad building. They just can't get the dynamic right, and obviously the clean sheet record is not good. So if Red Bull wanted to come in and stabilise it and put some more money in and try and do what they've been doing at, for example, Leipzig, then yeah, Nottingham Forest is a good enough place as any. But it's not really up to me to decide. It's more for the fans. You know, were they happy to trade off possible success with Red Bull for the branding? You know, it's one of those that I think everyone's got a different opinion on, but for me, it's a case for the fans to debate.
Are they still under a transfer embargo, Nottingham Forest?
I don't know for sure. It would surprise me because I haven't heard anything about it. But if the takeover's nearing, then they would have to be. But I couldn't guarantee it.
That's going to be big if they are. Absolutely huge, I would say. We'll give a nod and a sort of a doff of the cap to Neil Warnock at Cardiff, because obviously myself and Ross have covered them extensively on recent weeks on the English Breakfast, but they are steadily improving, although obviously 2 defeats the last 2 games. Not ideal, but I think they'll look to consolidate before hopefully making a push after Christmas. But Nat, I just want to get your thoughts on 2 clubs right at the very bottom, because they're both not far from where you are. Sort of proper old-fashioned names. Blackburn Rovers and Rotherham. Fair to say Rotherham are probably where they may be expected to be, or certainly not far off where they expected to be. But Blackburn in particular, what's the sort of viewpoints from you and from sort of supporters in and around that part of the country? I mean, are they really underachieving, or are they again a bit of a clown car club that has gone through this messy takeover?
Yeah, I don't think until they get rid of the Venkies, they're going to go anywhere, to be honest, because they have no ambition for them. The fans all hate them. They protested. They missed parts of the games, as a protest. I think until they go, I don't think Blackburn are going to progress. And I think it might take something like them almost getting relegated or getting relegated to get rid of the Venkies. So it would be a good thing for the club, potentially, to bring them back in a way. It was some failure, if that makes sense, because it might actually make the Venkies leave, but then which might help Blackburn rebuild as a club, I think. Yeah,
another club that's just underachieving. And from your sort of standpoint, do you think that, bit of a loaded question, but football in Yorkshire, do you feel like it's back on the up because you've had so many sort of years of not mediocrity, but some big clubs we've already mentioned that are down in the lower leagues. I mean, do you feel like there is a turning point coming? Do you feel like it's improving?
I mean, Middlesbrough's technically in Yorkshire, so
True.
according to some people, and to Hull as well. But I think I don't know, because I think especially with South Yorkshire, because obviously in West Yorkshire you've got kind of Leeds and Huddersfield. Huddersfield really overachieved at the beginning of the season. They've got a good manager though, so who knows what will happen with them. And then you've got Leeds, who, as much as it pains me to say it, because they're the team I really detest the most, they're a massive club, Leeds. They should be in the Premier League in terms of the reputation, the club, the fans. But likewise with them, the same as Blackburn, they just have an owner that's just poison. And I think the sooner he gets out of Leeds and out of football, the better, really. And I think with Rotherham, I think the only reason they stayed up last season in the Championship was because of Warnock. And I think they're going to go back down. They're not a Championship club, Rotherham, and they never will be. And I think they'll go down quite easily this season, potentially finish bottom.
Yeah, our one listener in Rotherham now is shaking his fist, going, "No, we will stay up."
Maybe.
if we've got one. I doubt we have, but you never know. We will also give a nod to Burton Albion, who I think are probably overachieving, even though they're 18th. For a club of that size, I think they're doing an amazing job. Still not convinced they'll survive, but hopefully they do. And the final club we want to highlight is Wigan. Because Ross, you've given a little promise to one of our new associates, the key 103 chaps in the Manchester area. For those people that have been living under a rock, you're doing some work for their radio station on a weekly basis for the teams in the Lancashire area, I believe it is. So Wigan fall into that category. So go for goal. What's your kind of thoughts on what's going on at Wigan?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure we've actually covered this yet, because I don't think we've had a podcast between the hiring of Warren Joyce, who is now at Wigan, former under-21s manager at Manchester United. He's got a very good reputation at coaching level, but he's come into this job at Wigan now, and his first game was last weekend, and he lost it 3-0, and I think they conceded the fastest goal in the Championship so far. It's a bit of a rough start for him in his opening game against Reading. I don't think it gets much easier either when they come back from the international break. I forget the upcoming fixtures from the top of my head, but I think he's got a sticky run coming. Also, rumours maybe that Paul Scholes will be joining him on the coaching staff, which is an interesting link. It's nice for it not to be Ryan Giggs for a change, but I'm not entirely sure if Paul Scholes is going to be the kind of guy that I'd want at my coaching staff. He's brilliant. I love Paul Scholes as a player, but as a person, I don't know. I don't think he's got the people skills to coach properly. I don't think so. I think that's a bit of an odd one for me. But I mean, the thing is with Wigan is I think they looked at Burton and Barnsley and said, if they're doing so well, why aren't we? Because we all thought Wigan would be doing much better than they were. We didn't think they'd be at this point in the season that they'd be in the relegation zone. If you could have picked any of them, you would have said Burton or Barnsley, And I get the feeling they had to look around them and said, if Burton can be mid-table, why are we in the relegation zone? And they chopped Gary Colwell, who did so well in League One, and now they've brought in a very unproven manager, which I think is even riskier. So they are an interesting one. I kind of fear that they've just shot themselves in the foot with Warren Joyce, but he has a long way to go. It's always a long season in the Championship, so maybe they can turn it around, but I'm very concerned for Wigan at the moment. Yeah,
same. Nat, did you have a thought on Paul Scholes as a coach quickly there?
I think he was just saying about how his people skills. I don't think he's really got enough of a personality to be a coach.
I completely agree. Yeah, completely agree with you.
Well, we'll see.
He's very, very miserable, isn't he? He's very
blunt. That's what I find him.
We've said that about captains before, though, that they haven't got a great personality and they do it via, different means.
Yeah,
and by example.
I just don't know about him as a coach, because I get the image I have in my head is, some 17-year-old kid who's trying to work his way into football, misplacing a pass, and then Paul Scholes snapping his fingers going, that was awful. And then just carrying on with the rest of the game, I just don't know if he's going to be a coach, it just doesn't strike me properly.
Did any of you guys see the interesting doodles that were released by BT Sport when he was watching the Man United Fenerbahce game recently? Did you see that?
No,
I saw some of them. I remember Michael Owens was about as interesting as that piece of tape. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Very interesting. Paul Scholes' was full of lots of very dark black circles and squiggles and when you get a biro and you try and tear the paper, I think he's quite secretly a bit of an angry man, but then
all gingers are.
Yeah. And you are semi-ginger, Josh, so you're allowed to say that.
Yes, I'm allowed to.
Just in case anybody wants to say we're being gingerist. So, yes, Josh, you can find him at the real Josh Dawe for complaints.
I'll take the ginger insults. I've had 26 years of them. I can take some more.
Fair enough. That kind of draws a line under our championship. Championship chat. We'll move on to League One and League Two. Just before we do, Ross, you enjoying the experiences with Key 103? A couple of weeks now in, enjoying what you're doing with them?
Yeah, it's good fun. Like the issue is there's only 4 clubs, so it does make it a bit like, oh, so how did Oldham do this week? Oh, they drew. So how do you think they're going to do this week? I don't know. And then that's it. But yeah, it's good fun. If there was more games to cover, I think it would be a lot quicker and much more interesting to listen to. I do kind of worry that everyone's going to be tuning in every week, just like, oh yeah, we drew again. Oh yeah,
Same
we drew again. Yeah, but there you go. It is what it is. It's great fun. It's always nice to have a chat to Adam, the guy that I'm talking to for the stuff. So yeah, it's great fun, and I'm getting some interesting insight, like that Paul Scholes stuff, which I hadn't heard of until I spoke to him yesterday.
There you go. So if you are in the Manchester area or surrounding areas, you can tune in to listen to Ross's reviews and updates for the 4 clubs mentioned. What night's it, Ross? On Tuesday?
Night. And there's going to be lots to talk about next week because one of them has set their manager today.
Aha, there we go. So there's a little bit of insight. So there's a tease to tune in next week. Right, after you've listened to the English Breakfast podcast, of course.
Yeah, and after I tell you which one it is in a minute, but there you go.
Well, naturally, yes. We will come on to that indeed. We and quickly, Josh, you just put in the chat there. Scholes did his badges at Oldham.
I think he did. He's definitely a fan of them and turns up there every so often and can be spotted in the away end.
I think
certain matches.
Yeah, that rings a bell. So I remember when he was at United, I think he said he wanted to manage there with Gary Neville, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
So interesting. Right, let's have a little a quick run through. It will be brief, but we'll have a quick run through of Leagues 1 and 2 just to finish up the pod. So League 1, let's have a look at where we stand. So we've got Scunthorpe at top of the league, 37 points. They're 5 points clear of Bradford City. So Nat, I'd be foolish not to come to you. Bradford, another big club, close or not too far from where you are. I suppose Bolton is as well, really. And of course, Sheffield United. It's up to you whether you want to talk about Sheffield United or not, but Bradford second, Sheffield United third, Bolton fourth. So do you think potentially we're going to have a Steel City derby again next season, or are you hoping to get out of one league as they come into your league, so to speak?
I'd like to say hopefully they don't come up, and I'd hope we do go up. But I do actually think Sheffield United will go up this season and automatic. I think they've been down there for a lot of years now, and I think finally they're winning games easily. They're scoring a lot of goals. I saw some stat they've scored more goals than Barcelona, and who knows else in the past few games they've scored more goals than like anyone else in Europe or something ridiculous. No, I think they had a bad start to the season, and they've got a good manager now in Wilder, and I do think that unfortunately this is going to be the year where they will go up automatically.
Through gritted teeth, I like it. But I mean, at least you get a Steel City derby. I mean, that's potentially.
Because I'm hoping we won't be in the Championship, even though I think we will be. I hope we won't be.
Of course, yeah. The caveat to that. And good to see Bradford and Bolton on the way back after the turmoil they've been through collectively. Ross, Danny's Peterborough are in fifth. Doing all right. I don't know. I can never tell if Danny's happy with Peterborough or not. He never seems to make it clear. But they are probably doing about the achievement they should be. But do you think Bristol Rovers in sixth, are they overachieving at this moment? Do you think?
Oh, absolutely. They came up from the conference, then came into League Two, and then went up from League Two, and now they're sixth in League One. I think it was Burton that did it as well last season. They went up from League Two and then went straight up from League One, so they've got a precedent for it now. But I'd be very surprised to see them maintain it, because I still think this is a club that was still kind of adjusting to life in League Two when it went up. So it's great to see them there. But I'm sure as you go down the table, if you haven't taken in the table, by the way, folks, go and have a look at it before the weekend kicks off, because I think, if I'm right in saying, the points gap between 5th and 20th is like 7 points from all the way down the league. It's so clustered. And I do kind of fear that Bristol Rovers will be drawn in a little bit further down as the season progresses. But right now, that table is an absolute marvel to look at.
7 points between 5th and 20th.
To put that into context, Oxford United are 20th. They're on 19 points, and they're 7 points from 6th. On BBC South the other day, their manager Michael Appleton said they were in a dogfight for relegation, and they're 7 points off promotion. You know, it's amazing how clustered League One is at the moment.
Yeah, it really is, and there's quite a lot of stories there. Josh, do you want to mention something on that?
Bristol Rovers, another one of many clubs in England that I follow. Being born in Bristol and having history. My dad came through their youth academy, albeit injured and left. The same year as a previously mentioned manager who's just joined QPR, and a manager of West Brom were also in his year. So I've always followed Bristol. They did get a big Arab takeover. They've got their own Brizzle Sheikh, so to speak, in there, who took them at conference level, put in millions of pounds, and they're looking to get a new stadium at the same time. So the higher up the leagues they can get to make sure they've got a crowd to fill their new stadium would be absolutely brilliant. I've already done a couple of stadium moves with other teams I've followed, and if they all both follow, well, if that one follows in the both, get my tongue in. If Bristol can follow in the likes of Arsenal and Brighton in successful stadium moves, it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, a club that's rich tradition, of course, and another club that we could focus on. I suppose the stories are down the bottom end, but we should say Port Vale, Northampton, Millwall, and AFC Wimbledon make up the top 10. A couple of clubs, though, looking down the table, are really underachieving. Ross, I'm going to give you free rein. Which one do you want out of the clubs down the bottom? Which one do you want to focus on?
There's two I actually want to mention. I'm sure we'll come to Swindon in a minute, so I'll leave them out for a second. But the two I want to have a quick look at are the two that have sacked their managers in the past couple of days, which are Charlton Athletic, who let go of Russell Slade the other day, and Bury, who recently, or today actually, sacked Flitcroft after, I think it's 6 games without a win, or 6 defeats in a row now for Bury, 11 without a win. I think that's the stat. It's amazing to see how far they've slumped, but they're still on 20 points. They're only 6 points off of 6th, so it's a little odd to me. But you can't argue with the rotten form they've been on. But Charlton, I think, are the biggest story from League One at the moment, considering how badly they've quote unquote slumped. You know, they've only lost 4 games, which isn't awful. I know they've drawn 8, but Russell Slade I thought was a pretty good appointment. You know, he's a very dull manager, but he'll set them up. He'll make them fall forward. He'll make them tough to beat, which is exactly what they've been so far this season. But he's been given the boot as well. So there's more protests planned about the ownership. Who knows who's coming in next? I know there was rumoured to be Steve Evans, but he's surprised everyone by going to a club in League Two, who we'll touch on in a minute. So I have no idea what's next for Charlton, but it's some testing times coming up for them, I think.
Yeah, they were awful. I watched them against Swindon at the weekend. They were awful. Less said the better, but another club that you'd like to see come back up or get sorted out, because the ownership situation down there is just a mess. I don't know if you saw, they took a taxi to Belgium, a London taxi with various bits and bobs plastered all over it, and drove it through the streets of Belgium, trying to warn the supporters of the other clubs that De Châtelet is part of, that what's going on at their club. So it's a novel way of protesting, I guess. Another club I want to focus on before we get to Swindon. Nat, I'm sure, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, because if I'm wrong, this is going to sound really stupid, but were you not born in Coventry?
I live there now, so...
Oh, no, you live there. That's right. Sorry, yes, of course. How silly of me. That's good enough for me. You live there. So what's the atmosphere like sort of in and around Cov then? Because, again, another club that's been through the absolute ringer. There's still talk of, I think they're trying to sell the training ground to, is it Wasps Rugby Club? I think it is.
They play at the same stadium as the Wasps at the moment.
I mean, how is it down there? What's the general thought process of the fans?
I really think that it just seems to me, from speaking to people in the local area, they're just fed up, completely and utterly fed up. And a lot of them have just stopped going. Like, there's a lot of people a few years ago had season tickets. Even when they were in League, went down to League One, they still went to watch. But now they're just fed up. They say the football's boring, and they just don't seem to be going anywhere. And they all turned out to be a good manager. That didn't really work out. And I think they just fed up. They can't see kind of a light at the end of the tunnel at the moment at all.
Yeah, you feel for them, don't you? It's again another huge historical club that are just being torn apart from the inside out. The one plus side, three wins and a draw for the last 5. That's got to be slight.
New manager type of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, new manager bounce. Yeah, it's got to be a bonus for them. And speaking of new manager bounces, that leads us nicely on to Swindon. Josh, Tim Sherwood. I could just leave it there, put a full stop, and then put the word discuss. But what's your thoughts on what is he? First of all, I mean, please be sensible in your answer here, because I could say a lot of things. But is he a director of football? Is he going to manage them? Because it strikes me that there's a different tag every week. So what do you make of the circus of Swindon at the moment?
You and me both on what I could say about Tactics Tim, but I'll keep it sensible. It does seem very strange that you'd put in a manager or the kind of person is a director of football position that is very loud, very big man manager. It doesn't seem like the kind of guy that you'd normally see in a director of football. On an aside, you've got someone like Robert Pires saying that he'd want to be director of football at Arsenal. Seems more of a director of football kind of person, fits that mould, a more calm and collected, not necessarily wearing his heart on his sleeve kind of person that you've got, which I think was shown in Swindon's midweek performance, or was it last night, when he stormed the touchline to direct the team and almost pushed the manager aside. So I'm not sure what is going on there. Not sure how the manager would feel to be, whether or not he's now officially lost the dressing room. Because if I was a player and I saw my director of football just jump over the top of him, push him out of the way and say, you're not doing well enough, would I listen to him when I go back into training on Thursday morning? Probably not.
No.
So I think, we'll see what comes out of that, but they might have shot themselves in the foot. Let's put it that way.
I tend to agree. And they lost to Eastleigh in the FA Cup last night. And by all accounts, I think Eastleigh could have put 10 past them, from what I can gather. So not good. Ross, have you got a brief view on Swindon before we leave League One? I mean, have you got a thought on what's going on there?
That probably sums it up. It's strange. We're still waiting for rumours about maybe being taken over by Red Bull. They were a bit cheeky by putting cans of Red Bull out when they revealed Tim Sherwood. So that's where the rumours really started, but we don't really know is the honest answer. The fact that Tim Sherwood is there and he's picking the first team, that he's involved in first team training, that he's helping give team talks, it's all very suspect. To me, it feels like Red Bull have said, right, we're going to get this takeover done, but we want to put Tim Sherwood in there now so he can get a feel for the club, so when we come in, we can move him into the manager position. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
But that's all hearsay and conjecture, so we don't really know. Either way, I wouldn't want to be a player there at the moment, with like we were just saying there, with the situation with the manager. And I'd be fascinated to hear what the fans think of it after Di Canio from a few years ago as well. They've got to be getting used to the eccentric.
Jeez, yeah, I completely forgot about Paolo. Crikey. Legend, I'm sure Nat still loves him. Bless him. Big Paolo. Let's leave League One there then, and we'll finish with League Two, where at the top of League Two we find Plymouth Argyle. Happy days. 7 points clear now. They are taking that league by storm. 28 goals scored, 14 conceded. Storming up the league. Just on them, Ross, are you like me backing the Green Army to get promotion this season?
Yeah, I think much like Sheffield United, I think it's probably about time they left their division. You know, they've been there far too long. We say it often enough, but I still think of Plymouth as a championship team. So I'd love to see them go up. I think the biggest problem that Plymouth fans are going to have are the fact that Carlisle United is still there. You know, everyone hates an away day to Carlisle United, but they're second. Can't get rid of them, can they?
Just can't get rid of them, no. They're just going to follow them all the way through the leagues. You can see it coming, can't you? No, they're doing excellent things down there. Derek Adams is doing a sterling job there. And again, as Nat touched on earlier on with Sheffield Wednesday's disappointment of playoff final, it would have been very easy for Argyle to have fallen away this season, and you see it time after time. Absolutely. And I think credit has to go to Derek Adams. He got rid of a lot of quite high profile players in the summer and brought in some new ones, and it seems so far to be working out. So good luck to them. Nat, let's get your views. Again, I know it's not a league you necessarily cover sort of week in, week out, but any experiences of any League Two trips in your time as a Wednesday fan, or any clubs that you keep an eye out for the results of? We've all got one.
Wickham.
Do tell.
So the last time we got promoted, we had to beat Wickham at home. They'd already got relegated from League One, and we had to beat them at home. And I remember we moved their fans over to the corner so we could have the whole away end for the home fans. And the Wickham fans, they were just great. Like they clapped Wednesday. They basically kind of wanted Wednesday to win, so Wednesday get promoted. And they all stayed at the end of the game to clap our players. And since then, there's been a bit of a love in between Wickham and Wednesday. So.
Fair enough. So they're the club that you happen to look out for. And I bet Josh has got one as well. Have you got a particular club that you look out for?
Well, I think we're coming on to them next anyway, because they sit in 4th position, but I went to university in Portsmouth.
Oh, Ross is going to be angry. Go on.
I went to uni in Pompey as well. So
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I do look out for their results. I haven't looked at them since probably the Appleton days, and started looking and just despairing of what has become of what was a great stalwart of the Premier League. You know, winning the FA Cup and it all going downhill very quickly from there. But at a similar time, I was having Brighton-related issues with trying to get their stadium sorted. So my looking out for their results has kind of fallen by the wayside. But I'm consistently frustrated that they're not near the top or getting promoted, because they shouldn't be in League Two. I know we shouldn't really say that about clubs, that they don't deserve to be that far down, and there's clubs in higher leagues that don't deserve to be that high up, but Portsmouth are one of those teams that should be in the Championship. They've got the fan base. They almost sell out every week.
Can't disagree with that, to be honest. I mean, they're just, as you say, you just think of that ground and that atmosphere, and I can't disagree with you. I know our Danny follows Barnet. I kind of look out for their results as well. They're currently sitting in 12th. Is Mad Dog still managing them, Ross, from memory? Martin Allen?
he might be. That rings a bell. I certainly haven't heard about him leaving. So
I'm having a look. Yes, he is. Yeah, he's still there. Good stuff. So Mad Dog's having a lovely time. Exeter down second bottom. That worries me because I don't want Paul Tisdale to lose his job. Or his hat, or his really mental suits. So kind of hope that turns itself around. Just before we wrap up, Lee, to Rossad, any other teams you want to particularly pick out or give a bit of information on?
Grimsby Town, because they've recently changed their manager as well. It was Graham Hurst, Paul Hurst, I think, isn't it? I always get those two mixed up. Paul Hurst has just gone to Shrewsbury Town in League One, which means they needed a new manager. So they went off and got Marcus Bignot, who you may remember from his playing days. He's been managing Solihull Moors for the past 5 years and been doing a relatively good job. So he's now in charge of Grimsby Town, and they're still up in 7th, still with a shout at the playoffs this year. They're my little favourite from League Two after a couple of successful football manager saves back in the day. But yeah, the new manager is Marcus Bignot, who I think is a fantastic name to have back in football. Yeah,
I did see that story actually break the other day. It's quite a bizarre one. Okay, so that draws a line into League Two. Now, before we wrap up the podcast, I just want to get your views on sort of kind of any other business, really. And there was one story, Ross, that broke today that I'm definitely keen to get our guests' thoughts on, in that there is or will be no League Three. That rhymes. Tell us a bit about this story that's come about today.
Yes, so the Football League has been looking at ways to restructure the English Football League to help promote youth talent for the England national team. One of the ideas was to add in a League 3, which would increase the Football League from 92 teams to 100 teams, and it would involve a lot of B teams from Premier League squads. Almost universally, the Football League hated the idea and said they didn't want it. And the verdict that came out today, the actual reason they've given for it, the reason it's been rejected, is because they don't want to reschedule FA Cup games for midweek, which I think is a bit of a cop-out way of saying there's too many clubs that are against us. But I was never really in favour of League 3 myself. I know from the EFL Cup as well, which has obviously been in the news today. The EFL trophy has got some bad press for having B teams in it. I think a League 3 would have been even worse.
Yeah, his club's going to be fine, of course, for feeling understrength sides. It makes a mockery of the whole idea of playing youth players, and there's that issue with the Bradford goalkeeper, when they're subbed on after a minute or something ridiculous. It's just like
it's 12 clubs though, 12 that have been fined
12.
for it, and it's all like maximum penalties of 15,000. And for some of them, it's just like we played a youth player, one extra youth player than suggested. And I think it was Luton Town were making the case today. They said they still played like 5 youth players. They played against the West Brom B team, which had first team members from West Brom, and they still beat them. So how can you fine us for that? So it's as if the clubs weren't disenfranchised enough. They've obviously now got to deal with this as well.
And I'm not comfortable with the idea of Norwich under 23s against Everton, and it just doesn't seem right. I don't know. I just can't get my head around it. Nat, have you got any thoughts on the idea of expanding the leagues? I mean, again, Wednesday have gone through divisions from time to time, from the top all the way down to. Have you been in League Two? I can't remember from memory. I haven't been there.
I think it's just a ridiculous idea, and I'm pleased that that's what the clubs have voted, because I think it just makes a mockery of lower league clubs having them playing against like the under 23s of Chelsea or whatever in the EFL Cup, especially when that's kind of always been the cup that gives a League Two team a chance to get to Wembley and have a day out, like Barnsley had, for example, like last year. I think it just makes a mockery of it, and I think the sooner they get rid of that idea altogether, the better.
Yeah, I agree. And same question to you, Josh. Are you like Ross and that against the idea?
Yeah, there's the only thing additionally I'd add is it's not going to help the teams that are in the league with those under 23 teams, because the gate revenues are just going to be absolutely appalling for home and away. They're just not going to get. Some of us follow teams in the Premier League. Are you realistically going to follow the under 23 team away to, Portsmouth, for example? You're not going to follow them. It's just going to, it was good, the right decision. Whether or not it's the right excuse, that's someone in public relations problem, not ours.
Yeah, I mean, you've only got to look at the gate receipts from the EFL Trophy. Even I think it was Charlton. They had an under 23s team play against them at home, and they had like less than 1,000 people in the stadium. People just aren't turning out for it. They're just not into the idea of playing on the 23 squad. So it's doomed to fail, really.
Yeah, waste of time. Which hopefully this podcast has not been. Hopefully people have enjoyed listening to us wax lyrical, particularly about the Championship. So just going to give our guests a final opportunity just to say anything else they want to say about their clubs, because of course that's why we got them on. So ladies first. Nat, anything else you want to add about the Owls? Anything you want to any players perhaps that you might want to suggest our listeners keep an eye out for, and any other final thoughts from you?
So in terms of players, I'd say Adam Reach, who we've signed from Middlesbrough. He's a left winger. He's played left back a bit, I think, and he also played up front actually away at Cardiff. I think if he gets going, he potentially, because Middlesbrough were quite disappointed to lose him too, he really will be a one to watch for us. And then also one that it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. We signed Alman Abdi from Watford, who played most of Watford's games in the Premier League last season for them. Now we've signed him, and when he's played, he's been useless pretty much, and he's been brought off at half time in a lot of the games. So it's what's wrong with him, and whether or not he can turn it around and perform like he should be. I think that'll be an interesting one to see, because on paper he should be one of the best players in the Championship, but he just hasn't been.
No, and you still fancy yourself a promotion?
Ask me after another 5 games.
like it. No doubt we will. We'll have you back before then. So we'll keep in touch with that. And same question to you, Josh. Again, anybody at the Amex that you think is worth keeping an eye out for, and any other expectations for Brighton this season?
There's a man that's always touted with a move up into the Premier League, which previously I thought wasn't mature enough yet, but if we don't get up, I fear we'll lose him, and that's our captain centre-back, Lewis Dunk. He used to be incredibly rash and was prone to a stupid yellow, but he seems to have got that out of his game now that he hasn't got an experienced centre-back next to him, and he's the more senior one in that back line, which I'm really enjoying his progression this season. And on the flip side of a young player coming through who was hampered by injury last year, Solly March has just come back to start playing for us, and he's really exciting. He was knocking on the door of the England under-23s last year until I think he did his ACL, and he's came back in the game where, at least if we don't win the league this year, we'll at least get a trophy for goal of the season from Steve Sidwell, scoring from the halfway line.
Quite impressive, wasn't it? I think me and Ross were like, what just happened there? Just completely nuts when that goal went in. But
Yeah.
The two I've picked out from your respective clubs, because I thought I have to pick two out. I don't know whether Ross would agree, but Ollie Norwood at Brighton, I think, is one that I keep an eye on, just because he impressed me at Reading, and he's an ex-Manchester United Academy graduate, isn't he? I think, from memory.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's worth coming. He needs to break into the team. We've got Kyle and Stevens at the moment that are set as that too, and Sidwell as well. So there's a lot of. It's kind of good for him. It means he can settle first before we ask of big performances from him.
Yeah, fair point.
Which is what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want somebody to break in, take it by the scruff of the neck, and
Yeah.
the one I picked out from Wednesday, I don't know if you agree, Nat, but I'm a bit surprised. I know he's 32 now, so he can't be classed as an up-and-comer, but quite surprised you kept Kieran Westwood after last season. Feels like a keeper that could potentially do a job at a higher level. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a brilliant goalkeeper, but he has a tendency to become injured quite a lot. And he did come out and say last week or in the last couple of weeks, that he hasn't been properly fit for over a year and a half. And it's interesting when he gets injured, actually. It always happens to be in a tough game, or when we're losing. He never gets injured when we're winning. So I don't know if there's something in that with his mindset, and that's potentially why he's not made it in the Premier League. But yeah, no, he's a brilliant goalkeeper. On his day, he's the best goalkeeper in the Championship. I do agree.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I wonder if he doesn't like it off him, so to speak. Had a brief stint with Sunderland in the Premier League those years ago, but good luck to him. Okay, Ross, do you want to wrap us up? Anything, final thoughts from you, and we'll draw a line under this special.
Yeah, I want Solly March at Southampton. I think Jack Stubbs. Jack Stubbs, I think, is another one for Sheffield Wednesday. I was quietly impressed with him a couple of seasons back. I know he's had his injuries, but I think he's one to watch. But yeah, as a roundup to the Championship, I hope everyone's enjoying it. It's another fantastic season. There's a lot of stories being told in this league, and it's always fascinating to watch. So hopefully our listeners are enjoying the Championship season.
Yes, indeed, and of course, if you are a new listener, which if you are, where on earth have you been? But if you are a new listener, you can catch Ross on a weekly basis, not just on his radio station, but also with our good selves here on a Sunday night. We record the English Breakfast podcast, which is myself and Ross prattling on about the weekend's action in both the Premier League and the Championship, and we have a little look at the League One and League Two games as well, and even some FA Cup games when they're on, which will be coming into focus again in the new year. So if you don't already, do hit the old subscribe button. You can get these specials. During the international break, we like to give you a few extra nuggets of interviews and specials to keep you going. And if you're more of a fan of the European side of action, then you can catch our regular pod, usually released on a Tuesday, recorded on a Monday, where we cover the big four leagues across Europe. So that's Italy, France, Spain and Germany, where myself, Tom, John and Drew pick our way through it. So that's the plugs done. Just remains me to thank my guest this evening. And indeed for putting up with my terrible internet issues. Less said about that, the better. So many thanks to Josh for making his debut, first of all. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, guys.
And, of course, for Nat for coming back to us for a second time. Thank you, Nat.
Been a pleasure.
And, of course, Ross, I could use the tagline that I use with Danny, you have to be here, but you don't have to be here. So I appreciate you coming on, as always.
No, pleasure as ever.
Good stuff. So that has been the Football Hipsters EFL/Championship special. Do keep it tuned to us. Do keep giving us those reviews, and keep your feedback coming. If there's a club that you feel that we're not giving enough love to, let us know, and I'll get Ross to do all the work, and I'll just throw to him. That'll work nicely. Right. Many thanks for tuning in. Enjoy your football. The international break is nearly done. Happy days. We'll be back to you very soon. Keep it tuned and keep your biz strong, and you guys is trendy. We'll speak to you very soon.